I'm not fucking leaving.
I'm not leaving.
Talk about. You got the lights on. We're not supposed to, right, Jim? Huh? He cut the lights on.
Let's squat about it.
Let's squat about it.
Squat about it.
February 19th, 2026. The lights were off, the doors were locked, and Jim Jones was caught on camera kicking his way into his own podcast studio. 50 Cent posted the footage, and that's when people realized this wasn't a rap beef. This was financial warfare. No diss tracks, no Instagram rants, no bars, just security footage, lease documents, and a caption that read, "Damn bro, this wouldn't happen if we was friends. Let's rap about it." That line hit hard because it referenced Jones's podcast name directly. It wasn't random, it was targeted. And it was cold. But before you can understand why this hit so different, you need to understand who Jim Jones was dealing with. Because 50 Cent doesn't respond to criticism like a rapper. He responds like an investor who's been studying your weaknesses. Look at his history. Ja Rule. 50 didn't just diss him, he systematically dismantled his career over years. Rick Ross. One photo of his past as a correctional officer ended the beef before it started. Floyd Mayweather. 50 used their personal friendship to create public humiliation at the exact moment it would hurt most. The formula is always the same. He studies the situation, he waits, he finds the pressure point that does the most long-term damage. Then he strikes, and he never rushes. That's why when Jim Jones made a comment on a podcast in December 2025, 50 didn't react the next morning. He gathered receipts first. The podcast was called Let's Rap About It. Jones and his co-hosts were discussing documentaries, specifically whether it's acceptable to make one about someone without their approval. Just weeks earlier, 50 had been heavily promoting his latest documentary project. The timing wasn't subtle. Jones called unauthorized documentaries petty. The hosts compared them to exposing someone without consent. They questioned motives. They laughed about camera angles making subjects look smaller. No name was directly mentioned, but the subtext was loud enough. 50 saw the clip, reposted it, and instead of defending the documentary, he went somewhere else entirely. He labeled Jones and his crew squatters, implied they weren't even paying for the studio they were recording in. That shift, from documentary ethics to financial credibility, changed the whole argument. Because in hip-hop, image is currency, and nothing cuts deeper than public financial exposure. Then he made a phone call, not privately, publicly. 50 uploaded audio of a conversation with the landlord of the building where Jones was recording. According to the landlord, there were serious lease issues, a build-out that was never properly finalized, back rent adding up to at least $80,000, with some reports pushing significantly higher. The landlord also revealed something that made the situation feel calculated rather than coincidental. There was allegedly a partnership agreement tied to the media content being produced inside the space, meaning a percentage of the podcast operation potentially belonged to the building owner under prior terms, and he floated the idea of selling that stake to 50. That's when this stopped looking like trolling. If you can buy into the building, you control the access. If you control the access, you control the platform. 50 wasn't just mocking Jones, he was potentially positioning himself to own the infrastructure Jones needed to respond. Then came the footage. Security cameras, time-stamped, high definition. Jones and his crew standing outside a locked studio door, the hallway dark, power cut. You can hear them talking about the lights being off. Then Jones kicks the door. All of it captured. All of it posted. The caption twisted the knife. Let's rap about it. 3 words that referenced the podcast name and made the whole thing feel like a punchline Jones walked into himself. 50 followed it with what appeared to be eviction documents, a default notice, a lease termination, dates showing the agreement had allegedly expired. This wasn't a surprise lockout, it was a process. Documented, time-stamped, public. Social media exploded. Memes within minutes, reaction videos within hours. Blogs picked it up. People who had never heard the original podcast episode suddenly knew Jim Jones got locked out of his own studio. And here's the part that made it sting longer than usual. The visual was too clean. Door kicked in, lights off, lease terminated. That image became the headline everywhere, even if money was paid later. Even if the situation was resolved quietly behind the scenes, the footage had already traveled. You can't unring that bell. But what most people watching the chaos didn't realize was that this wasn't the first time 50 had used Jim Jones as a chess piece. Back in 2007, Dipset was fracturing internally. Cam'ron and Jones were clashing over ego and business. The alliance that had defined New York rap for years was cracking. 50 saw it immediately. Jones had just scored his first major solo hit with We Fly High, his first real individual spotlight after years of standing behind Cam. 50 publicly praised him right at that moment. Then Jones performed at a G-Unit event. That appearance was seen as betrayal by Cam'ron. It deepened the Dipset split. Years later, 50 admitted openly he knew exactly what he was doing. He understood Jones's ambition. He understood the ego of someone finally getting their own shine. He understood the insecurity of a man stepping out of another's shadow. And he used all of it. So, when a podcast comment about documentaries gave him an opening in 2026, this wasn't a new story. It was a continuation. Old tension, new leverage, same strategy. Study the weakness, find the pressure point, apply it publicly. The difference in 2026 was the tools available. In 2007, 50 could fracture alliances and win radio wars. In 2026, he can potentially partner with landlords, post security footage from building systems, and turn a lease dispute into a viral moment watched by millions before lunch. That's what made this feel like a different category of beef altogether. Jones, to his credit, didn't collapse. He posted himself doing martial arts moves, Bruce Lee poster in the background, calm energy. Caption, no locked doors. It looked random. It wasn't. It was a message. I'm not embarrassed, I'm not emotional, and I'm not playing your game. Because that's the trap with 50. The second you look hurt, he wins. The second you rant, he reposts it with a laughing emoji. The second you start explaining yourself, he's already moved on to the next angle. So Jones reframed it. A day later, he posted a studio walkthrough. Construction everywhere, walls unfinished, exposed wiring. He explained it wasn't a failing podcast operation. It was a build-out in progress, a multi-purpose creative space covering media, fashion, music, and broadcasting. He even addressed the cold temperature and the locked door directly, acknowledging it and turning it into a narrative about grinding and investing in yourself. That was smart, because if you can flip humiliation into hustle, the perception shifts at least partially. Not completely. The footage had already traveled too far for that, but enough to stop the bleeding. The deeper reality this whole situation exposed, though, is bigger than one beef. In the early 2000s, power in hip-hop meant street credibility, crew size, and radio dominance. You beefed with bars, you responded with records. The battlefield was music. In 2026, power means ownership. It means contracts. It means who controls the building, not just who records inside it. 50 Cent by this point wasn't just a rapper. He was a television producer, an executive, a businessman with multiple income streams and estimated worth that dwarfs most of his early 2000s peers. His power didn't come from being the hardest on the block. It came from being the most strategic in the room. And when someone with that kind of capital feels disrespected, they don't reach for a microphone. They reach for a lease agreement. Jones questioned 50's documentary ethics on a podcast. 50 responded by potentially buying into the infrastructure that powered that podcast. One side brought an opinion to a business fight. The other brought ownership. That's not an even matchup. And that's the uncomfortable truth this whole thing put on display. You can't freestyle your way out of unpaid rent. You can't diss your way back into a locked building. When your opponent controls the lights, the argument was already over before it started. Beef in hip-hop used to be loud. Now it's calculated, and the most brutal disses aren't delivered in verses anymore. They're delivered in lease terminations, posted to Instagram at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right caption, by someone who planned it 3 moves ahead. That's the era we're in. And if this situation proved anything, it's simple. In modern hip-hop, it doesn't matter who can rap better. It matters who owns the lights.